Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to The Only Podcast. My name is Chris Ranini, your host. As always, joined by TheOnlyColors.com managing editor Joe Toohey. And we've got a jam-packed episode here. Basketball is officially underway in terms of real basketball play. And the football team has a pretty big game this weekend. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing well. A little sleep deprived after the late night last night, but
I'm always up
okay
till
with it.
about 1 a.m. anyway. It actually, I kind of liked it because it gave me something to have my eyes on while I was still. I know some people were, but yeah, starting the game at 10. I mean, I guess it was 9 local time, but that was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really tip until like 10:20.
Yeah.
The good news is that it seems like the new rules kind of sped things up a little bit, so that was helpful. But
Yeah, man.
yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, all right, we're gonna start with basketball, the Kansas game. Then we're gonna talk briefly about. Then we're gonna move into football. Talk briefly about last week's game against Maryland, and then look forward to Ohio State, and touch a little bit on recruiting if we have time at the end, depending on how long this goes. So, but yeah, we're going to start off with basketball, and the Spartans in Chicago come away with what was the final score? They don't have it on the thing. 79-73 win over number 4 Kansas. And it was a bit of a slow start, a lot of turnovers, a lot of fouls, which kind of is the case for every MSU non-conference game, but they didn't foul nearly as much in the second half, and they started hitting shots. Denzel Valentine got a triple-double, got some help down the stretch, and MSU comes up with a big win to open up the not open up, but to early in the season. They're now 3-2 in this Champions Classic deal with 2 wins over Kansas, a win over Kentucky, and 2 losses to Duke. But Joe, when you watched that game last night, what other than Denzel Valentine, what jumped out to you?
yeah. I mean, it's then the Denzel Valentine show this year, and we kind of knew that going in. But one thing that jumped out to me was the struggle that is offensive creation when Denzel Valentine is not on the floor.
Yeah.
We were kind of hoping that Aaron Harris was going to be that guy to create offense on his own to some degree when Denzel Valentine went out, but he has not been that type of player yet. He kind of slogged through some foul trouble early in the game and also took some shots that Tom Izzo didn't like. So there's that. Matt McQuaid, the freshman, early looked a little rough, trying to create offense on his own. Looked like he was kind of out of control, going to the basket a few times and turned the ball over himself a couple times too often, but really redeemed himself at the end, going 3 for 3 from 3 for 9 points and a big block at the end as well. So those were the things that stood out. The lack of front court depth didn't hurt as much as some people thought it might. Matt specifically had some concerns about, sort of how MSU is going to handle Kansas's front court depth. There's a great stat from John Gassaway that Kansas was held to under 40% shooting from 2-point range, which is a great example of sort of some of the defense that got played. And I thought Deonta Davis, Matt Costello, Javon Best, though he was sort of overmatched against Perry Ellis at times, and even Kenny Goins played okay in the post. He had a block, which was nice to see. So overall, I mean, it's a great win. The fact that they were able to score a win early in a game that they weren't favored in bodes well for the future.
Yeah. With Aaron Harris, we kind of talked about this. I think it might have been last week, but everybody just assumed that he would come in and be a star because he scored a bunch of points at West Virginia, and even Dickie V was talking about that on the broadcast. But he's got a ways to go, and it's difficult to play for Tom Izzo, and he's had a whole year off, basically being scout team. And reports indicated that he was good, but playing in games are a different deal. His defense was not good. 1 for 4 shooting, just kind of looked uncomfortable out there. While Bryn Forbes, the guy who I had penciled in as a starter and turned out to be such, played very, I guess scrappy would be the word. He had 1 rebound, but I think it came late and it was a big one. But he goes 3 for 6 from 3, 4 for 8 from the field. You maybe would like to see some more shots from him considering how he was playing. But, yeah, in terms of creating offense, it was basically Denzel Valentine because Lou Rawls Nairn, he's not a threat to shoot, but he's also not positioning himself as a threat to shoot, where sometimes the ball will be passed around where it'll be passed to him out from the post, and he won't shot fake to try to draw a defender out. He'll just immediately pass it. And I feel like if he kind of just adds a little bit of a pump fake in there to kind of pull the defense out a little bit more, because otherwise he's just another body throwing the ball around.
Yeah, and he didn't play as much as I sort of expected him to play.
15 minutes, took 5 shots.
Given that he's the only true point guard on the roster, only playing 15 minutes is
interesting. McQuaid. I mean, Matt McQuaid played 22 minutes, and then obviously Valentine played 38 and Forbes 29. So it was mostly those two guys in the backcourt with a little bit of help from McQuaid.
Yeah, and it seemed like down the stretch too, they were playing. Costello fouled out, so they were playing Deonta Davis, but so it was Davis, Valentine, Forbes, Bess, and McQuaid. So that was an interesting sort of crunch time lineup. It seems like even though during the weird 30-second kind of interviews that they did both in the first and second halves, in the first half it sounded like Tom Izzo was pretty unhappy with the backcourt, saying that they were soft,
right?
And I think that McQuaid was sort of the primary suspect in that.
He was turning down some looks pretty early, looking like a little nervous, but that certainly changed by the end of the game. It'll be interesting to see how that confidence carries forward, because it went 180 degrees within one game.
Yeah, I mean, he was taking shots that he was driving to the hoop and taking shots that I was amazed that he thought were good ideas or had the green light to take, right? I mean, for him to be sort of a primary ball handler and drive the ball to the basket is getting a lot of responsibility from Tom Izzo very early for a guy who is a true freshman playing in his second game. So McQuaid's an exciting player, though. I mean, I think he's got a lot of promise. He seems to have a good feel for the game as well as obvious shooting ability.
He's not just a shooter.
Hashtag not just a shooter. Yeah, I mean, it was an exciting game. It was interesting that Kansas didn't have, I don't know how to pronounce this freshman's name, but Diallo. I don't know how you say his first name. Chak Diallo or something.
Yeah.
I think that might have made a difference in this game, although MSU also was out a couple guys. But
right, Colby Wallenman was Davis played, but Wallenman was right in that rotation off the bench, playing 13 minutes. Well, normally you'd get Gavin Schilling in there, or even Marvin Clark for a little bit, depending on the lineup. To be without both those guys and to play how they did in the front court was very good. I mean, other than Perry Ellis going 9 for 18, no one from Kansas really could do much of anything. So
yeah, I think Frank Mason did a pretty good job of getting to the rim.
He did, but 4 for 6 on the line, but 5 for 15 shooting, and Wayne Selden went 3 for 12.
Yeah.
So,
that's another thing, though. One thing that Izzo was talking about preseason, and it kind of made sense from a roster structure standpoint, is that he was pretty happy with the way that the team looked offensively, but had some questions about what the team was going to look like defensively, which makes sense. You get a lot of roster turnover. You lose a guy like Dawson, who's clearly a good defender and could guard a number of positions, and you enter in some guys who haven't played quite as much, and to hold a pretty good team like Kansas to under 1 point per possession. It was just under 1. There were 74 possessions. Kansas scored 73 points. Is a really encouraging sign. I mean, part of that's probably just that Kansas shot poorly on the day, but I think, Selden was a big 3-point shooter. To hold him to 2 for 6 is helpful.
Yeah, and it felt like early on that they were really trying to just figure out some lineups that worked. Part of it was fouls, part of it was guys struggling, but typical Izzo non-conference first half, you've got all sorts of guys in there, weird guys, as Izzo would put it. And it felt like they were just trying to figure out what worked and what didn't. And they did down the stretch when they had that lineup with Costello and Valentine and Forbes and McQuaid were helping out Valentine with the scoring of it. But yeah, I mean, in terms of someone handling the ball, we'll see what Nairn can provide going forward. But Valentine was essentially playing the point.
Yeah, absolutely. He was initiating offense and needed to be for big chunks of the game. But even though he had a much quieter game than he did in the opener, I thought Deonta Davis was quite good and kind of did what
he doesn't look out of place.
Needed. Yeah, playing some good defense, rebounding the ball, and sort of accepting a small offensive role,
right.
Which is big because sometimes those big recruits come in and much like Marvin Clark did last year, although Marvin Clark wasn't the biggest recruit, but sometimes those freshmen come in and don't understand their role immediately, and
that's a good point.
Difficulty. So it's nice to see that Davis and McQuaid are both the kind of guys who kind of get it.
Right. So we've talked this far without really talking much about Denzel Valentine. So he finishes with 29 points, 12 rebounds, 12 assists, the fourth Spartan to get a triple-double along with Magic, Draymond, and Charlie Bell. I think also encouraging after the game was he was upset that at some of his own shots and thought he wasn't very efficient. I mean, 10 for 23 shooting's not bad, and 3 for 9 from deep, but he seemed to keep it cool, and it's been very interesting to watch him develop throughout his career. And he had a number of drives to the hoop there where I just kept flashing back to his freshman year, sophomore year, where anytime he drove to the basket and went up, he would just flail and lose the ball and just had no confidence or strength going to the basket and up to the basket. And he had a couple of drive-bys and lay-ins that were very impressive and have had me reevaluating his pro prospects, because I wasn't so high on them a year ago. But if he's added this drive game, that's huge. He was, just tremendous.
Yeah, he plays like an old man already. But one of the other interesting things is last year in the Champions Classic against Duke, and much different MSU team and all that, but Denzel Valentine had a pretty rough game against Duke last year. He had 5 turnovers, only 3 assists. He was 4 for 9 from the field, and just did not have a very good game. To see sort of the line that he put up, but also his ability to take on that lead scoring role is really encouraging, because we still talk about who's the second guy, right? But the question of, can Denzel Valentine take the lead offensive role that Travis Trice generally had last year on and be efficient in a role like that, was still an open question, and I think we got that one answered.
Yeah. And in terms of who's going to help him score, and Forbes can spot up shoot, but he's not really the ball handler. I thought in limited time due to fouls, but Javon Best looked aggressive on offense when he was in there. He struggled to defend Perry-Ellis, but he made 3 or 4 shots, one of them which was a deep jumper. He's an interesting spot there in that role. Kind of an athletic, another big body that they could have used last year, I think, when he was out, when they were kind of relying on big men and basically Dawson playing the 4. But a lot of positives from that. What do you think about the story of the first half? Was obviously the fouls. I think there were something like 25 at least fouls in the first half between the teams. They're trying to crack down on things, and you didn't hear the whistle much in the second half, although I hypothesized it was because guys were in foul trouble. I mean, what do you think of how the game was called and kind of the idea of how games are going to be called here?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is small sample size, right? So we've seen games like this in the past, especially early on in the season, and especially in non-conference, where there isn't necessarily the comfort level with your opponent, where like you sort of know what to expect from an opponent, and then with the officiating crew as well. And I think early in the season, officiating crews are a little more likely to emphasize certain things anyways. But yeah, I mean, if the way that this game was called is going to be the way that all games are called, then it was a little frustrating to watch in the first half because it was just a parade of fouls. But I also think that, yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head or getting at the right idea, which is that players are going to adapt and adjust, right? They're going to not commit fouls when they are in foul trouble, or they're going to get used to the moving screen foul that got called a number of times and got called a number of times as well in the opener against Florida Atlantic at both sides as well. That seems like it's a huge point of emphasis for the officials this year.
Yeah, I will say it's hard to know if it's going to lead to adjustments when guys aren't in foul trouble or when a team isn't in foul trouble. When a team's in the double bonus and when you got 2 fouls in the first half, you're going to back off. But are guys going to adjust enough that early in the game they'll be playing like that? I don't know. I think the calls did open things up in the second half because guys had foul trouble. I don't know if had they not been in foul trouble that it would have continued. So it's part of it's going to be on the refs to stay consistent. You know, are we going to get to the postseason and then they decide everything goes because they want to swallow their whistles, kind of like the way hockey does it, where just the rules change in the playoffs? I don't know. So,
well, another thing I'll say is that this was a fast game. In terms of pace, there were 74 possessions, and the fact that there are more possessions suggests that there will be more fouls because you just got more possessions going on. And then also, if you're playing a little faster, I would guess that would sort of lend itself to more physical play to some degree as well. So I do remember too, and Time Hop is great for this because I was looking at my Time Hop on my phone, but I do remember specifically complaining about the refs in the Champions Classic game last year against Duke as well. So, I think it's a little too early to tell, at least from the games that I've watched. And I don't know. I kind of like that it was a little bit faster paced.
Yeah. And with the 30-second deal. And I kind of noticed it because there was less sitting around and dribbling it out. You kind of offense just initiated a little bit quicker, and I liked it.
Yeah, the end game seemed like it went by at a reasonable clip, and I don't know if that's just because it was close enough in the end game situation where it didn't make sense for either team to start fouling.
Yeah,
but it felt like the flow of play in the last 2 minutes didn't get interrupted unnecessarily, which was pretty nice, especially because it was 12:45 at that point.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to touch on this game?
No. So next game is on Friday against Arkansas Pine Bluff.
Yeah.
And I mean, this team is going to play a lot of basketball in the next 2 weeks because there's the Wooden Legacy Classic tournament that they're playing sort of over Thanksgiving weekend. So between now and 2 weeks from today, MSU will end up playing another 6 games, and that might include Arizona, depending on how that tournament goes, and it will definitely include Louisville in 2 weeks. So a lot of basketball should be a lot of fun over the next couple weeks, given how good this team could end up being. Yeah,
some I noticed that I felt watching the game last night is that I didn't have questions about the personnel. Normally, when they do these Champions Classic games, it feels like MSU is just so overmatched in talent. Other than the year they beat Kentucky, when they had all the seniors and whatnot, they had a deep team. But a lot of times when you watch MSU, and you wonder, where are they going to get this from? Where are they going to get this from? Now we're wondering who's going to be the second guy to handle offense, and there's questions about how they're going to do things, but I don't think there's questions about who. This team has a lot of pieces, and we knew that, and we knew it was going to be a very deep team because of everybody that was coming back, and that's the case. There's questions about the team, but I think there's less questions about if those questions can be answered, I guess is how I would say that. So it's just about guys finding their roles, Izzo finding the right lineups, and I think things are looking good for them moving forward.
Yeah, that's it was very meta of you, Chris.
Yes. So That'll do for basketball. On to football now. Let's talk briefly about the Maryland game. I don't even know if we really need to talk about the Maryland game. Maryland is very, very bad at throwing the football. They have thrown at least 2 interceptions in 9 straight games. They have only played 10 games this year. They've thrown at least 3 interceptions, I think, in 6 of those. And MSU turned those into a lot of points. It's hard to evaluate the MSU D because of how bad Maryland is on offense, I guess. But obviously, I mean, the quarterback's the big deal. We'll talk about it in a second. Is there anything non-quarterback related to the game you wanted to talk about?
I think one of the big takeaways, and it's hard to know exactly. Well, there's 2 big takeaways from the game, right? The first thing is that Darian Hicks is healthy and is playing.
Healthy
enough to be playing at least.
Yeah.
And I think he's listed at the start. He is listed as the starting corner, one of the starting corners for the Ohio State game, which moves Demetrius Cox to safety, which I think is a benefit as well. So that's helpful. I mean, they look good in the Maryland game because Maryland is terrible at throwing the ball. However, I do think that that's the best foursome in the secondary at this point. You know, Colhoun, right, Cox, Nicholson, and Hicks.
Especially when you're going into a place like Columbus, I think it's weird because when they went into Ann Arbor, Antonio opted to start 2 true freshmen for the first time. So the fact that and they didn't play bad, but the fact they're going veteran this time around is interesting. I think Cox has definitely been better at safety than he has been at corner.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And Colhoun has been good relative to the other players around him, I guess. I think he just naturally kind of looks better because everybody else looks worse. Hicks, I think, has been far and away the best corner when he has been able to play. I'm not counting Vante Copeland because he only played a game, but Hicks is at least solid enough. Now, okay, yeah, we'll talk more about that when we get into Ohio State in a minute.
Sure. So then my second takeaway from the Maryland game, though, was that the special teams looked much better, and part of that was that Maryland's punter was really bad, and both of their punters that played were both terrible. But coverage, I mean, they did kick to Will Likely a couple times, which was scary, but the coverage teams did a good job on Will Likely.
And Hartbarger had good punts.
Hartbarger did a great job punting the ball. There was the questionable fake field goal, which was really weird and totally inexplicable. But Geiger did hit his 1 field goal attempt, which was nice. And
could have had 2. The only down part of the special teams was a terribly executed fake field goal.
Right. So all I'm saying there is just that against a team that has a pretty solid special teams unit, this MSU team, which has struggled on special teams all season, had a massively positive game. Which is great. I mean, if that is an indication of the fact that special teams can be adequate or maybe even above average going forward, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So that's
all I got. Yeah, those were the two major things.
Special teams were good. Special teams were pretty good. So the quarterback deal. Connor Cook obviously gets hurt, stays in the game a little bit. Doesn't play in the second half. Says he could have. Debates onto whether or not who got pulled who out of the game. Didn't really need him. Although they might have if Maryland had anything on offense. But actually, before he got hurt, though, Tyler O'Connor got a series. And a lot of people who don't know the program flipped out on Twitter. Like a lot of national folks were like, whoa, Connor Cook's not in the game. What's going on? And I tried to say, D'Antonio does this. He's got to get a guy ready for next year. This makes perfect sense. This makes a hell of a lot more sense than last year when they put Damian Terry backed up at the goal line at Penn State when you're at a 17-0 lead. I didn't like that. This was perfect. This was a great. Maryland's not much of a threat to score on you, so you don't need to play catch up. And it's at home. It's a nice day out. I will say in that series, O'Connor did lead them to a touchdown. He didn't look all that great. He had a couple of high throws, might have been nerves early. He did make a good throw on the run, and the touchdown pass was good. So it was a help to get ready for next year, but it was actually a help to get ready for later in the game when Connor Cook got hurt and O'Connor comes in. I forgot to pull up the final stats, but he looked okay. Nothing to like. I guess I would best phrase it as nothing to get all that excited about. I was surprised they didn't go with more Damian Terry, considering he played at Nebraska. And I know it's kind of part of that package, but it would appear that O'Connor is the clear number 2 guy. O'Connor finished 6 for 11 with a pick. I don't remember the pick. What happened on the interception? Do you remember?
I don't remember that specific play, no.
That's probably bad. 6 for 11. Didn't pass a ton. One thing I noticed, though, the run game seemed to be a lot better when O'Connor was in there for whatever reason. Gerald Holmes was running extra hard when Tyler O'Connor was the one handing the ball off to him.
Well, I think part of that was that Tyler O'Connor was a threat to run the ball. I mean, Well, I'm just saying that it's when Connor Cook is in the game, unless it's a third down or something like that, they can't fake zone read. It's just not going to work. Defenses understand that they're not going to put Connor Cook in harm's way very often, whereas I think defenses had to respect Tyler O'Connor just from the simple fact that, we're not overly concerned about him taking too many hits because, he's not Connor Cook.
Yeah, well, there was one touchdown drive. I don't even know if they passed the ball.
No, they didn't.
Holmes runs and some O'Connor runs. Okay. So a week ago, I said Damian Terry looked promising with the way he was releasing the ball in the 2 throws that he made. Extremely small sample size. A week later, Terry had 1 pass. It was a deep ball. Another very quick, compact release, but very much off the target. I remember the O'Connor pick now. He lobbed up a deep ball that was basically fair caught by the defensive back.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was a poor deep ball. I guess the way I'll phrase this, have you seen anything from these guys to give you much confidence in the quarterback position next season?
In game, I guess probably not. But I don't know. These are really strange situations. And the other thing I'll say about this particular game is that you should give Maryland's defense a little bit of credit at least, because Connor Cook himself was 6 for 20 in the game, and didn't look particularly good either. I think that Maryland's defense is pretty decent, and they get overlooked a lot because Maryland's offense is really just so horrible. So I don't know. I think it's way too early. I think the sample size is way too small to say really much about either O'Connor or Terry. And it seems like the sentiment among the fan base is that it's going to be Terry next year. I think it's going to be a very close quarterback competition in the spring and then throughout fall camp. And I think that's good. I think that competition will be healthy. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I gained any real information about anything. But I will say that I liked D'Antonio's decision to play O'Connor early in the game.
Yeah.
And it's not just that it's at home, and it's not just that Maryland, isn't particularly a threat, but the game was tied at the time when they put O'Connor in, and it was meaningful time. I mean, the game was definitely in doubt still, theoretically. So I like that. I think it builds the quarterback position for the future, even if O'Connor ends up not being the guy next year, right? I think it's still a good idea to have another quarterback with experience. I mean, what happens if Connor Cook gets injured against Ohio State? Right? Like, you have to have a second guy who has at least some game experience, and I thought that was
and that'll be interesting. Cook says he's good to go, but if he takes a bad hit, the fact that O'Connor has some reps now is good. What I would have liked to have seen a little bit more in the second half was more passing the ball. I mean, they put Terry in, but he only basically handed off or ran it. I would have loved to have seen some more passes. They don't have to be deep balls, but I mean, if you're going to get the point is to get these guys some reps, get them some reps. I mean, it always kind of is weird, and not just relative to MSU, but when you put in a backup quarterback and he just hands the ball off the entire time and doesn't throw a pass, like, is it really that valuable of an experience? And I mean, for playing a half of football plus more series, for O'Connor to have 11 passes in that game is like not a lot.
So I think two things happen there, right? One is that the running game has struggled to some extent, and I think that one of the goals was to play a intact offensive line for a little more time and get them some more experience in running the ball because the run game has been a little bit lackluster all season, which is one thing. And then sort of the next thing is the game wasn't totally out of hand to some degree, right? I mean, it was 24-7 for a big chunk of the game, but that's still not, throw your hands up and forget about the game territory, right? I mean, it can still turn on you, late in the third quarter or early fourth quarter. It's really unlikely, but I think that's part of it too, is they knew that they had to play these backups, but if they could run the ball and get some more time with the offensive line altogether, having reps, I think that was valuable. And then also just kind of burning time was valuable to some extent because the game, I mean, it was still a little bit of a game for more time than I liked. But
which is why I was, just a little surprised they didn't try to get, especially, I mean, if Cook said it was okay, but especially if you don't know if Cook could be hurt more or again, you'd want to get the guy as many passing reps as you can. So, I mean, O'Connor's he's a junior at this point, right? So, I mean, he's been in the system for 4 years. He's got it as much as he's going to get it. So, the other thing I wanted to mention, we were talking about the running game. L.J. Scott is very clear. Gerald Holmes is the number one back for them, and he's done good in that role. But L.J. Scott, 2 carries, 2 fumbles. I was not surprised that he did not return to the game after that second one, and I question his role a bit moving forward, just because fumbles are going to get you on the bench big time.
I think we haven't seen that from him yet, or until we saw it against Maryland, right? So I'm not too concerned. If that happens
I think he's okay. I just think the coaches are gonna just, if you fumble the ball, you're not there. And Madre London, I mean, was back technically 4 carries. So I'm curious where Scott is on that depth chart heading into this next game after the last one.
My guess here is that the depth chart, even though it lists all 4 guys, including Delton Williams as co-starters, I think Delton Williams has been lackluster on the year. I mean, I don't think he's looked very good. And he also hasn't been particularly good at pass protection either. In fact, he's the only person who I can think of that foursome who has totally missed a guy, at least in my memory. I'm sure that other guys haven't been ideal at pass protection either.
I think Holmes missed one on a Cook sack early. He moved up, and then a blitzing linebacker came from the outside right where he was going to be. So I don't know if that was his fault or if that was his read, but Holmes has been good in pass protection, and that was one of the reasons he was getting time early in the season because he was.
Yeah, but my guess is that it goes Holmes at this point, just because of how much he has run the ball over the last couple games and the way in which he has run the ball. I think he's been pretty good, and pass protection. And then I think it's L.J. Scott, despite the fumbles, because I just don't think that anybody else has his combination of size and speed. And then London, who's still working his way back from injury to some degree at least, and then Delton Williams after that. So that would be my guess, is that the 2 guys who will get the most reps against Ohio State would be Holmes and Scott.
So let's talk about that Ohio State game now. Not quite the top 5 undefeated showdown, possible 1 versus 2 we were hoping, not hoping for, but we're thinking could happen. But it still comes in as a top 10 matchup, and when you look at the way the playoff rankings are with MSU at number 9, MSU's still very well alive for the college football playoffs.
And it's still College Game Day is going to be in Columbus.
I think College Game Day will be the third MSU game this year, so that won't be included amongst the batches of disrespect. I was kind of surprised they went with it, but maybe not, because it is a top 10 matchup and could very well be the team that represents the Big Ten in the playoff. But Ohio State comes in 10-0. They've looked good at times. They've looked bad at other times. They've gone back and forth between quarterbacks, both because of play and because of arrests. They've settled on J.T. Barrett. Ezekiel Elliott's running for 100 yards every game. They seem to have found their groove, even if it was a little bit of a slugfest at Illinois. I find it hard to see many edges in this matchup for MSU. I mean, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about matchups or keys to this one?
Yeah, so one interesting observation I had, and this is sort of before we get into the more hardcore analysis, but I think it's amazing that Ohio State can be the defending national champion, be 10-0, and in order to repeat, they need to win their next 5 games. They can't lose any of their next 5 games. So I thought that was kind of amazing, right? Because they have to beat us. They have to beat Michigan if they beat MSU. They have to win the Big Ten championship game, then they have to win their semifinal game, and then they have to win the championship, right? So,
and that's something Pete Carroll has made a point to mention too, or Steve Sarkisian when he was at USC. Those USC teams, you didn't have a conference championship game. You didn't have a playoff. You're adding 2 more postseason games against top competition, and that's what makes any team that wins the playoff makes it an incredible feat. And for the way Ohio State finished last year was just incredible. The teams that they took down in the end to get there. So everybody's got their work cut out for them, though, and that's why we like the playoff, because you earn it. This isn't no split national titles based on politics or anything like that. It's you one true champion, as the Big 12 would say.
I think that there would be some fan bases that would argue with you about politics not mattering in terms of who gets into the playoff. But
in terms of gets in, but no one is arguing Ohio State with the way they finished. No one is saying they shouldn't have won it. I mean, right. You don't like to say they proved that. You don't like to say they proved themselves worthy, because that's not what the criteria was. But I mean, it's not you go 11-0. You play your bowl game against not even a conference champion, maybe, and then you just get a title. I think back to Nebraska, Michigan splitting in '97, and a lot of people thinking it was a career vote for Tom Osborne, the way they split it with Michigan. So that's what I meant. Obviously to get in, a lot of factors to get in, but I'm just saying when a team wins the championship, no one is going to doubt them.
Right, that's fair.
So I like the playoffs. So anyway, back to this game.
Yes.
What matchups do you jump out to you?
So I think the biggest thing to me is going to be Connor Cook against the Iowa State secondary, because they've been pretty good in terms of defending the pass. In Bill Connolly's S&P Plus passing stat, they are number 3 in the country. They are geared towards stopping just more basic plays. They give up some big plays, but yeah, I think Connor Cook against that Ohio State secondary is going to be big, because I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for MSU to run the ball in this game, given the struggles that they've had against teams that don't have the talent that Ohio State has. So the only way that they're going to start to make some hay in this game offensively, I think, is through the air, and then potentially with running the ball once that's set up by the pass. The good news is that I think that if Connor Cook and Aaron Burbridge are on their game, there isn't a secondary that can stop those 2 guys. Just given the windows that Cook can throw the ball into and the way that Burbridge can high point the ball. So that to me is the biggest thing. And probably the second biggest thing is can MSU secondary do anything against JT Barrett this year? Because last year JT Barrett absolutely shredded a secondary that had Curtis Drummond and RJ Williamson and Trey Waynes.
I will say on that, that was a big part of that was JT Barrett making some unbelievable throws. Just unbelievable throws during, like, you couldn't cover it. Like, MSU's defense was designed to make quarterbacks make tough throws, and he made all those tough throws. But like you said, no Trey Waynes, no RJ Williamson,
no Curtis
Drummond, and this passing defense has the only team they stopped was Maryland.
Right, which you and I could go out and stop probably. I think that the fact that Ohio State has settled on JT Barrett is a definite minus for us, because I think that Cardale Jones, though I think has his strengths as well, I think that he represents a style of quarterbacking that this MSU team could capitalize against. I think that this MSU defense is still pretty good at creating turnovers in some sense, and I think Cardale Jones is a lot more likely to give up turnovers and get sacked than JT Barrett is. So it's that's unfortunate. So to me it comes down to, can MSU outscore Ohio State? Because I think Ohio State's gonna sort of
they only punted I think once in last year's game, and I would be surprised if they punted very much in this game. Just based on how that offense is moving, based on how MSU's defense has struggled. And on the other side, Ohio State's defensive line against MSU's offensive line. Now, at the beginning of the year, this MSU offensive line was very good. The top five were good. They didn't have much depth behind them, but they've all been banged up. Even Jack Conklin got turned inside out against, was it last week against Maryland? He hit a bad stretch, I think, where he allowed a sack and had a holding penalty. Or was that last week? It was here last week or Indiana, and you just never see that from him. A year ago, he shut down Joey Bosa. I mean, he was tremendous last year, and I don't know if he's healthy enough. I don't know if the line as a whole is healthy enough to stop what is a pretty fierce front seven, especially Joey Bosa, where Illinois at times had three guys blocking him. And given how MSU has really struggled to protect Connor Cook in these last few games, it's going to be very difficult to get many throws off, which is why I'm curious to see, as they did against Michigan, how often they go to those sideline fades. That had to have been like 50% of Cook's throws against Michigan. And when you add in the fact that he doesn't seem to have much zip on the ball because of that injury, that's a throw he can make with it. He doesn't need to put zip on the ball. That's a ball he just needs to place. And I think you'll see a lot of those fade passes to Aaron Burbridge and McGarrett Kings, and that's what I'm going to guess is going to be a heavy load of their offense for the reasons of getting the ball out quickly and the fact that Cook can't maybe put as much behind it.
Yeah, and I think RJ Shelton in the running game actually will be very important in this one, because they're going to have to do some unusual things, I think, to create some positive plays in the running game. And I think the jet sweep package with RJ Shelton is one way that they can sort of mix things up in such a way that they get some favorable situations in the running game. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of difficulty, and even the strength of MSU's defense is going up against Ezekiel Elliott. I would think that the front seven for MSU's defense is the strength, and Ezekiel Elliott is having a potentially Heisman winning season at this point. So yeah, it's there's finding positives are going to be difficult, and that the answer isn't special teams at this point.
No, so. And Joe Schad had a comment today. He talked to 3 coaches who have played MSU and Ohio State this year. If we looked at the schedule, we could probably figure it out. I didn't think about it.
PJ Fleck, Kevin Wilson, maybe. Yeah, and then
in Maryland, but they had Edsel was the coach at the time.
So who's the guy at Rutgers?
Kyle
the interim-
Flood.
No, oh yeah, so that couldn't be him either.
Anyway, these three coaches said that Ohio State has the edge in offense, defense, special teams, and it's a huge talent mismatch. And I do not disagree with that. Coming into the year, we knew this defensive backfield was going to be questionable. They've been decimated by injuries. We knew the offensive line would be good, but not deep. They've been decimated by injuries. Outside of the quarterback, with the way MSU plays, those are the two most important positions, and they've struggled throughout the year in that in Ohio. And now you're going up against a monster talented team in Ohio State. And just from a pure personnel standpoint, I don't like MSU's chances.
Yeah, I mean, I get why you're saying that, and I do think that there are going to be a lot of difficulties in this game for MSU, but I do think that MSU has a couple position groups that are superior to Ohio State's. I mean, I think that at the quarterback position is one. I think that at the wide receiver position is another place where MSU's got an advantage, if only because Aaron Burbridge is, really
sure. I think the comment was meant for just overall offense overall, but in position groups, certainly there are positions where MSU makes a claim. Certainly.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. But so, I mean, if I can sum it up my best Paul Feinbaum voice, I mean, Ohio State really hasn't played anybody.
No.
I mean, their best win is at home over Penn State at this point. So,
and I mean, it does count for something because they dominated at least on a defense that's a good defense, but that Penn State has. What was it? There was one more thing I wanted to touch on. Okay. And the other thing, when Urban Meyer has the talent advantage, he knows how to use it. He knows how to attack MSU. He's not one of these coaches that will just simply stay and do what they do and just simply try to out execute. He is one of the best coaches in the country, without a doubt, top 3, and he knows how to take advantage of matchups. And I think that's exactly what he's going to do.
Well, okay, so that's interesting. So how did you feel about the talent margin in the 2013 game?
I think it was as we look back on it and we know what the players fully were. I think that the talent was pretty close between the teams.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it was probably closer at this point. But I think I still think that there was a talent deficit in 2013, just from a pure athlete perspective.
I mean, I think Ohio State's receivers got a lot better the next year, but I mean, he just knows how to put his guys in good positions, and against this MSU defense, it's very obvious what you want to do, and that's throw the ball against his defensive backs, and I expect him to do that. And that's not exactly complicated, but I'm just saying, I think he knows how to put his guys in the best position to succeed against that opponent. I think that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely a good coach. Even if there was no talent deficit, I still think that traveling to Columbus is going to be a difficult trip for this team. In any case, right? With as much as is on the line, and sort of at the stage of the season, it's going to be a very difficult environment to play in.
Yeah, and that's another deal. Although it's worth noting, MSU lone win against the Buckeyes this in the 2000s actually came in Columbus, though that was noon game against a struggling, very much struggling Ohio State team. But
yeah, regular season at least. Yeah.
I mean, MSU hasn't beaten Ohio State at home since '99, so Ohio State's been a hell of a, I wouldn't even say a thorn in the side. They just dominated this program outside of the one year that they were really down, and then the Big Ten championship game, which was a hell of a performance from MSU.
Yeah, and I would also say that it's been not just MSU, but the entire Big Ten basically for the last 15 or so years, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's really frustrating that Ohio State really only had one down season, which was that 2011 year with Luke Fickell, and then they were right back to being at the top of the Big Ten every year again. They've got to eventually have like a 3 or 4 year stretch where they're not at the top of the Big Ten, right? Like that's got to happen at some point, doesn't it?
He hasn't lost Ohio State hasn't lost a regular season conference game under Urban Meyer. So
it's frustrating.
I don't know. It hasn't happened yet. His only Big Ten loss, or his only loss to a Big Ten team, was the Big Ten championship game. So, I don't know.
It's just, it's just frustrating to see the same team be one of the best, if not the best team in the Big Ten year after year after year.
Yeah. I mean, he's done everything and then some that people thought that he was going to do, and that's not an easy feat when you look at what Michigan has done compared to what things have been said about their coaches. And I think Jim Harbaugh will get there, but
disrespect, Chris.
Urban Meyer took a team that went 6-6 the year prior, 6-7, right? I think 6-7. And went 12-0, and could have been the national championship game if things.
Well, no, they were 6-6 because they were not eligible for a bowl game.
No, they went to the bowl game. They played Florida in the Gator Bowl. I mean,
really?
Yeah, because Ohio State fans would end up being pissed that they didn't self-impose a bowl ban, because then the next year they could have played for it. Yeah. Florida won 24-17. They were both 6-6.
Okay. Well, I take it back.
It was not exactly a memorable game for that. But I mean, Ohio State's been the class of the conference. They've been the class of the conference for ever since Tressel arrived, so 2001. So I mean, it's 15 years where they have generally owned the conference, with Michigan competing with them for a little bit, Wisconsin and MSU competing with them for a little bit. So yeah, and I don't think this game is any sort of statement game about either program. Ohio State's going to be good. I think MSU will be fine moving forward with their program. It's just one that has a hell of a lot of implications for whoever wants to play for the national championship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's nice about this game is that I have no expectation of winning it, right? So
that's one way of looking at it. So then if they do come out of it, you get if they lose, you whatever, and if they win, you've got a surprise. Actually, I don't.
Then we do the dance of joy.
Is the line still about 13 points? It opened at 13.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't think it's moved much. And that seems to be pretty consistent with what most analytic systems have to say about the game. Bill Connolly calls it a 14-point game. Spartan Dan calls it a 12-point game. And I think actually the system that's highest on MSU is Brian Fremo's FEI, and FEI calls it a 5-point game for Ohio State. But I think that the betting markets suggest that it's the 13-point game as well.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to talk about this game? I mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we know what MSU's weaknesses are. Ohio State wants to attack those weaknesses, and it just is going to come down to if MSU, I think, can execute what it wants to do. I don't think it's going to be anything fancy here. It's not any sort of unique matchup deal like a Baylor or something. I think it's just defensive backs are going to have to play the game of their lives. Offensive line is going to have to protect enough for Connor Cook to try to make some plays in the passing game, and if MSU can get a running game to help, that will be good.
I think we're going to see some rabbits pulled out of the hat in this game from MSU. I think that D'Antonio has been setting some things up over the course of the season, whether that's Damian Terry being in the game or.
But I don't think that's a good thing to set up. We talked about that in Nebraska. We talked about that after, I think, last week of the Nebraska game, is that's one thing you don't like setting up because you're taking the ball out of your best player's hands, and I'm never a fan of that.
Right. I mean, unless they do something absolutely crazy, like, like a trick play out of a formation like that where Connor Cook ends up with the ball and is able to throw. So, yeah, I mean, I think that we might see something like that. I think we're going to see them do something funky in the special teams area one way or another. I really want them to execute a surprise onside kick because I think that those are underutilized and could be very useful.
Didn't they try a surprise pooch kick in the Big Ten championship game? I think after the field goal, I think they tried one, just like pop it, not like an onside kick, but like a pop it up in between,
right,
or something like that. So
they might have done something like that, but yeah, the surprise onside is I think an underrated strategy.
The only thing is, I don't know if Ohio State's the game to do it against. I mean, Urban runs the special teams himself. That's kind of his deal. I think it's similar with Michigan. I don't know. I think those are two good enough teams and coaching staffs that they know to be ready for fakes and actually, the fake punt that didn't work against Michigan. I was told that was a great job of Michigan's players reading that it was going to be a fake and adjusting as such, and it paid off. So I mean, maybe it'll work. I mean, they faked against Maryland. Maybe that was something to put on tape again. It feels like these trick plays have not had the hit rate that they the last couple of years that they had previously.
That's true. So, but still, I think that there's going to have to be, unless MSU is sort of organically exercising some special teams advantage, which I doubt very much at this point.
Yeah.
I think that they're going to try to manufacture a positive play in the special teams phase somewhere in there. The other thing that I hope to see is if the running game isn't working, I just hope that they are willing to abandon it a little bit earlier than they have in the past, and then maybe come back to it later if the game gets close. But I do think that the passing game is one of variance, right? So there's a lot of plays that end up being no gain or negative yards if it's a sack, but there's a lot more upside. And so in a game where you are an underdog, it appears to me like throwing the ball around is one of the better strategies. So.
Right. I've always, with this team and when they struggle to run the ball, I've always been a proponent of them passing to open up the run, especially when you've got Connor Cook. Use him, have him be your number one option. Start off with play action rollouts to move pockets. At least use the pass to set up the run. I don't like the run to set up the pass when you've got Cook. Now the other thing is, though, I don't know how his shoulder is. If his shoulder's not doing well, you're going to need a running game. So
I think he'll be fine throwing the ball.
He was looking, from what I had, various people had said, it could have been an issue with possibly either an AC joint or a rotator cuff deal. I have no idea. There was just people basing it on how he was reacting to the various tests in the brief moment that they showed him on the sideline. But they did something on the sideline where he was in a heck of a lot of pain. And he's not. I don't think he's going to be 100%. Which is why I also think not only is the sideline fade their number one go-to pass play, but it's one you don't need zip on the ball. So I'm expecting a heavy dose of those kind of plays.
Yeah, I think we'll see him play pretty much at 100%. I don't think that they're going to game plan around an injury. If I feel like if they felt like it was going to be necessary to game plan around an injury, I think that they would not play him, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's oversimplifying it, but yeah, I don't know. It seems to me like they should be able to handle it. And then the other thing is they've been a little less. So MSU in general on defense has been a little less aggressive with Harlan Barnett calling the plays instead of Pat Narduzzi. And I think that this is a game where getting more aggressive actually makes sense because Ohio State is just incredibly efficient, and bend but don't break is not going to work against them. And I think that this MSU team just needs to be aggressive. And if JT Barrett ends up hitting those ridiculous over-the-top plays, then you live with it because those are at least lower margin plays than letting them run the ball a lot or kind of dink and dunk down the field. So those are sort of the three things. I think they got to create some sort of positive play in the special teams area somehow. I hope that they just abandon the run if it's not working, and I hope that they're a little more aggressive defensively than they've been for much of the year this year.
Yeah, I guess my keys would be don't allow the big plays on defense, whether that's a big over-the-top pass, whether it's a big Ezekiel Elliott run. Keep it in front of you, kind of make them work their way down the field as best you can, because that was a big problem last year. They gave up a ton of big plays. Offensively...
So we have opposite takes on that then.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Because my take is that Ohio State is incredibly efficient offensively, and you're going to have to create just create variance in the game, right? So whether that's dialing up blitzes more often or leaving your guys on an island, even though that might, lead to big plays, I think that that's kind of just what has to happen in this game for MSU to win when they're such large underdogs.
Yeah,
but I see what you're saying there too.
I just think about last year's game and how they gave up so many big plays, and it just demoralized them a bit defensively. And see, they're efficient. The idea of not giving up a big play doesn't mean, I'm not saying play 5 yards off the receiver and keep everything in front of you. I guess I'm just saying play good enough defense that you don't give up the big play. I don't think I'm not meaning any sort of game plan. So just play good defense, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. That should be one of their keys, to play well on defense.
Prevent the opposing team from scoring more points than you.
Right. So elsewhere, hit those sideline fades because I expect to have them. And the other is turnovers. When you win the turnover battle, it's a huge important stat. If it's a turnover in a good spot, could lead to a score. Just because I'm not expecting Ohio State to punt very much like they didn't last year. So turnovers will be a thing for me. Because Cook threw a pick at Nebraska, threw a pick in Oregon or against Oregon. So this is not. He'll need to take care of the ball and kind of force it. All right, we've talked about this game plenty enough. We've been here for a while. What's your score?
I haven't thought about this. Let's say I think it'll be closer. I think the MSU covers, but they still lose. I think it'll be Ohio State 30, MSU 24.
I'm going to say Ohio State 42, Michigan State 27. So they don't cover. They don't get many stops. So yeah, and lastly, we'll talk recruiting. A number of guys have decommitted, sort of. They sort of decommitted because they wanted to take other visits, and MSU doesn't want team guys to take other visits. So it's not as, sounds weird to say, but they're no longer considered commits by the MSU staff. That's why it wasn't they go and say, I want to decommit. It's just, hey, I'm taking visits. Okay, you're not a commit. And some of those were on MSU's decision too, based on some people I had talked to. So, but there's still a top 20 class, I believe. Still a very good class. Still a lot to go. Program's not falling apart. I had some people theorize that Tyler O'Connor played in order to impress the recruits. Oh, it was the freaking announcer on ESPN. not Beth Mullins, but the color guy, theorized that playing
Joey
O'Connor,
Galloway?
no, Anthony Becht, I think. He
Oh,
theorized that they were playing O'Connor to show to the recruits that they're willing to play young guys, which none of these recruits are even going to play with Tyler O'Connor.
yeah, that's
So-
garbage.
So no, that's not what. Well, because like I said, national people didn't know why O'Connor was in the game, so that was what someone was thinking. But just no,
Yeah.
they're fine. I mean, MSU had rarely put together a nearly complete class this early anyway, so the fact that they need or have some spots open again is nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah, the one that's unfortunate is Hunter Rison.
Yeah,
Yeah, because he was the first 2017 commit. You know, he's a legacy guy, being the son of Andre Rison,
yeah.
and yeah, I mean that's the one that's too bad.
It makes me think of Mark Ingram. That wasn't a decommit, but choosing Alabama over a legacy kid choosing Alabama
Right.
over Michigan State. So
Yeah, or the other one is Drake Harris was the other one that got me because he was an early commit to MSU and then took it back and then had a big ceremony and committed to Michigan.
and through MSU and through shit at MSU in the process too.
Right, exactly.
So,
So yeah, I mean, I've then the other fun rumor was that all these guys are decommitting because D'Antonio is going to take another job. That was my other favorite rumor that was going around, whether that was South Carolina or Southern Cal.
And it was enough that like Drew Rexford said Michigan fans had pestered recruits with that, so it was enough that it was brought up. So no, he's not leaving. So
yeah, it's been funny too. The Q&As that we do every week with rival blogs, basically every week the question is, is Mark D'Antonio ever going to leave? And so I have to answer it the same way every time, which is no, it doesn't make sense for him to do it. But it's funny because, in this day and age of coaches just kind of jumping around a lot, that's sort of an unusual thing, right? A coach with D'Antonio's resume deciding to stay at a non-blue blood football program is rare, but it's one of the reasons I love the guy.
Yeah. So, all right, we've been here long enough. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you follow on Twitter at The Only Colors. Also, the game is 3:30 ABC, if you didn't know. But at The Only Colors on Twitter. Subscribe on iTunes. Maybe the RSS. I think it's broken, so apologies. I don't know how to fix it. I'm on Twitter at Chris Vannini. He's at JOBIN 2 letter E. And we will talk to you guys next week. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you.
See ya.